All right, so now we're ready to put all the parts together. So in this video, we're going to talk about the aggregate demand, aggregate supply, how to define the equilibrium. So how do we find the stable point in this model? Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. We're going to talk about this in two ways. We'll start with the long run, and then we'll move to the short run. So we have our price level, which again is the GDP deflator. We can think of it that way. And then we have a real GDP. So we've got an overall price level in our economy. We have our ability to produce, the long-run aggregate supply. And then we have our short-run aggregate supply, which we've said in the last few videos, we've been talking about why that's different than long-run aggregate supply. And then finally, we have our aggregate demand. So we finally have our aggregate demand. So this point here, I'll label it with an A just so we have a name for it. This point here is known as the long-run equilibrium. And so what makes it a long-run equilibrium? Well, it's an equilibrium because it's going to tend to stay there. And this one is going to tend to stay there in the long run until something else happens. And of course, something else always does happen. So it'll tend to stay there, stay at A until something changes. And so we'll talk over the next few videos. We're going to be analyzing recessions and inflationary pressure and something known as stagflation. And we'll be starting from this kind of long-run equilibrium point. So it's an important point to know. So what kind of things will change? Well, we could have, like, for example, a change in aggregate demand. Something causes aggregate demand to move. We have a change in the input prices. And the other thing we could have, we won't actually be showing this because we've already kind of talked about this, is we can also have a change in potential GDP. Okay, so remember this point is labeled as potential GDP. So that could happen as well. So any one of these things would move our equilibrium, and then we would probably end up in a short run point, and then eventually we would expect the economy to adjust back to this long run equilibrium. At least that's what this model is about. So now let's go ahead and look at, well, okay, that's a long-run equilibrium, but is there equilibrium in the short run? And the answer is yes, there is. It's just this equilibrium is not as stable as the one we're talking about above. Let me go ahead and draw this quickly. So price level, as always, you're probably so tired of seeing me draw these. Long-run aggregate supply, short-run aggregate supply. But in this case, I'm going to put our equilibrium somewhere else. Okay, kind of made a little mistake. This shouldn't really go down. It should just be getting steeper. Okay, so let's do our, let's make it a little further over. Okay, let's make our aggregate demand like this. Okay, so let's make it go like here. So we're going to be here. Okay, so we're at this point. Let's call it B just to be different than where we were before. And so this point is called a short-run equilibrium. So long-run equilibrium, all three things are equal. In the short-run equilibrium, we just have aggregate demand equal to the short-run aggregate supply. Okay, so we have an equilibrium right now. It's not changing quickly, and it will tend to stay there until these sticky things adjust. Okay, it will tend to stay here, to stay at B, until the wages and the costs. Okay, so we can get a short-run equilibrium above or below the long-run average supply curve. But again, we call it the short-run equilibrium because, yes, it might stay there for a period of time. There's kind of a disagreement about how long this time will be, but it's not going to. We would expect it to then automatically, kind of on its own, start adjusting as there's pressure for the wages to either fall or, in some cases, to rise. Okay, so that's the equilibrium. It's important to keep those two things separate, the long run and the short run equilibrium. And then in the next video, I'm going to come back and talk about the usual cause for recessions.